Here's 2.0 is our topic of conversation today on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. Hope you'll join us. Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. We are brought to you by WynnBET. Clay Link here with RotoWire.com's lead prospect analyst, James Anderson. And as I mentioned, pitching prospect tiers 2.0, the topic of conversation today. Last week was the hitting prospect tiers 2.0, and now on to the pitchers. James, you were kind enough to break these guys into tiers, and you included your player shares, which are very important for us to know because we want to know who you're drafting. James, anything you want to say before we just dive into the article here?
No, man, this has been a really kind of like a week of a dead zone for me in terms of drafting. I've resisted the urge to enter any more drafts, and then we've got like TGFBI, and I've got my Tout Wars and Labor drafts all starting within like 3 days of each other, so that's going to be busy.
I'm really excited to see what you do in AL Labor. First time there. Congratulations again. Well deserved. You've kind of been deserving of a spot in Labor for like 5+ years, but glad you're finally in, and you're going to rep RotoWire well, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm doing like the Raz Slam, but I also did like a Mike the Mouth fast DC. I can only do the fast DCs now, I think, because I don't have the patience, James. And plus, I don't want to be sitting around like mad at some random dude I don't even know who it is just because they're taking a while to pick.
My most recent DC was a half-hour clock DC.
Nice. Those fast ones, you don't even get a half an hour. You get about 10 minutes before Mike the Mouth is texting.
Yeah, he's blowing you up.
Yeah. Sending you tweets about how you're taking, or not tweets, but like GIFs about how you're taking forever. Well, James, let's get into pitching at prospect tiers 2.0. You also, as you did last week, you included the ADP within a pretty narrow range of January 18th to February 17th. So we have an idea where these guys are going more recently. So thank you for that. Shane Baz in a tier all of his own, really. And you label this the please stay healthy tier. I think it's interesting that you've drafted him a couple times, even though you say, yeah, you can't see more than 140 innings, even if everything goes well, healthy for Shane Baz. But you're still, not completely out, even if you don't expect more than 140 in a best case scenario.
No, I mean, I kind of learned that was one thing I got a little wrong last year. I think I still took pretty good pitchers in the areas where I would have maybe taken a guy that I wasn't expecting to throw a ton of innings. But there's certainly a place for a guy who, if he can really help your ERA, your WHIP, and he's giving you pretty good strikeouts on a per inning basis, I still think there's a place for Baz. Maybe depends what type of pitchers you've taken to that point. There's been multiple times where I've taken like Zach Gallen over Shane Baz because I just wanted the quantity that I think you're getting from Gallen. Even if I think Baz might beat Gallen in the ratios. But if you've already got a couple horses on your roster at that point and you're taking Baz as an SP3 maybe who is just going to really help you when he does pitch, I think that's fine. So, he's so good that I think even at 130, 140 innings, he could return plenty of value here.
Yeah, and the Rays, I just have such a good deal of faith in them. I mean, their hit rate for turning guys around or putting pitchers in their best position to succeed isn't 100%. I mean, they couldn't turn around like Michael Wacha last year. But I do generally trust them to do all they can to have their guys in the best position and to max out their stuff and max out performance. I think I alluded to it last week, but when you had Jeff Ponce of Baseball America on the pod a couple weeks ago, he put some Garrett Cole comps on Baz, didn't he? You want to?
I think he was talking about
specific.
Yeah,
pitches.
if you just are comparing the individual pitches, there's a lot of similarities. I think with the fastball and with the changeup. specifically, if I recall.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean that checks out. Like all you have to do is just watch Boz pitch, and it's very clear that he has the type of elite upside that you're looking for. I mean, I think it's very like I don't know which pitcher you would maybe do the cutoff at. Maybe if you're talking about like a fully healthy Verlander, maybe like Dylan Cease, but there's a point like in the 80s or 90s or so where Boz clearly has the best stuff of any pitcher left on the board, and then so you're just kind of weighing that versus the innings you're going to get from him.
Who do you like more for redraft, Boz or McClanahan? Is it Boz for you?
Boz, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like McClanahan too, but I'm probably with you. The projections, as you'd expect, all over the map with Boz's innings.
And
he's a better.
And I've said this. I think I said this in his outlook. Like it's not a 100% lock that he even opens the year in the big league rotation. Who knows what their schedule is going to look like the first like few weeks, but if they're able to send him to AAA and go with like a 4.5 man rotation for a couple weeks, that could be a very legitimate way to manage his innings on the season. So if you're taking Boz, just know he might not be someone you're plugging in that very first week, but like you know that you're going to get those 130, 140 innings at some point throughout the season as long as he stays healthy.
Now, the next tier, universal appeal. These are the guys who, along with Boz, you feel like should be getting drafted in your standard mixed league. I think it's interesting, though. You kind of highlight that as much as you like Aaron Ashby, and Reed Detmers, there are questions as to whether Ashby will even be a part of the rotation, whether Detmers will be part of the rotation out of camp. Joe Ryan, the other guy in this tier, doesn't really have those questions. He say he should be pitching in the big league rotation all season, but he seems like the one guy in this group of three that you're out on, even though he has the fewest questions when it comes to
I think
time.
he has the worst stuff of the three, pretty clearly to me. And so at that range where and like he's getting drafted way higher than the other ones. His ADP is 211, Ashby's 269, Detmer's 409. So you're paying the most because of that sort of certainty with the role. But where he goes, there's also guys who don't have questions about their role who I just like more. So I just don't think he's a value where he's going. But like I think Ashby's got the upside to be worth where he's going. But I really, really like Detmers where he's going. I think that one's the big time value in this tier.
Yeah, it looks like you're all over Reed Detmers, 6 out of 7, so high exposure right there with Reed Detmers. We'll get back to him in a second, but Aaron Ashby, you mentioned that he's kind of on the short list of guys who could, have a Trevor Rogers type season. You don't expect anybody to really have that, but maybe it's Ashby. I really do like the stuff. Possibility of him spending time in the bullpen, but the Brewers are kind of in that mix where they're kind of like the NL Rays, where I just Ashby, Eric Lauer, I want a lot of that team and especially that rotation.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to last year, very, very rarely did even Woodruff or Burns start on normal rest. They were using, whenever they could, they were using the 6-man rotation to give those guys an extra day in between starts. Now, of course, that's coming off of the 2020 season. So they may, go a little bit further with those guys and not worry about them starting on normal rest in most of their starts this year. But the Brewers, I think their whole focus this season is keeping Burns and Woodruff and Peralta as fresh as possible for the postseason, because that's their ticket to doing damage and like going to the World Series and riding that rotation. So it's not the idea of them going with a 6-man rotation for a good chunk of the season is not crazy to me. And I think Ashby is just flat out better than Adrian Hauser. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Eric Lauer, even though I do really like Lauer, especially at his price.
Yeah, I've been drafting him quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I don't see a scenario where like Ashby is a bust because he just throws like 80 innings as like a 2 inning reliever all season. I just don't see that as how they use him. I could see him being frustrating though, because I could see there being weeks where you're just not sure if Ashby's going to get a start when lineups lock on Monday. So I think there are reasons to be a little hesitant with the projected role, but I think people are sleeping a little too much on his upside. He really has a big time ceiling. So that's the appeal with him.
And Lauer, not a prospect and doesn't have that kind of ceiling, but you wrote his outlook for the site, right?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because a lot of those guys who come on strong, there's that recency bias at the end of the year and they're maybe a little overpriced. As you say in the outlook for the site, if you didn't have him on your team last year, you probably missed it, how good Lauer was. And just doesn't seem like the general drafting public is really pricing in what we saw. I mean, 2.23 ERA, even 1 WHIP, 76 strikeouts over his final 80 and 2/3 innings. Pretty
yeah, and you can point out like there were some of those starts I think were against like the Pirates. So like you could say like he's not going to be that good over a full season, because I think he did get some pretty favorable matchups over that stretch. But you can also just see in his pitch usage, he threw 5 pitches over 10% of the time last season. But he increased his slider and curveball usage during that run where he was very successful. So I think you can kind of point to that. Like he's not a guy where you want him just throwing his fastball a ton. You really want him to lean on his off-speed stuff. And the more he did that last season, the more success he had.
Yeah, the kind of arsenal change, the pitch mix tweak, something you can at least hang your hat on and feel good. Plus, really going on a limb here, but the NL Central's kind of like the new AL Central. I mean, there's just so many bad offenses to pick on. The Reds, Pirates, and Cubs.
I mentioned this on the I think the podcast last night when we were talking about labor mixed. Even with the DH coming, the NL Central is where you want to be as a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I mean, even the Cardinals don't really scare you that much. And so, yeah, that's really for Brewers pitchers. And in the division, that's, all 4 matchups you feel pretty good about. So, yeah, I've been, I'm not a Brewers guy here living in Wisconsin, but I'm going to be all over that team in fantasy this year. And you say the Brewers maybe going 6-man rotation. The Angels have already confirmed that they're going 6-man. They guaranteed Michael Lorenzen a spot when he signed. So, Reed Detmers, you're probably not getting many 2-start weeks, but I think maybe that's something I have in my head where it's like, that's a knock against the guy. But really, your projected 2-star guys only end up making those second starts about, 50, 60% of the time. And maybe that's not such a big drawback, especially if you're getting high quality performance every time out from Reed Detmers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really all about the price with him. Like if Detmers was getting drafted where Ashby is getting drafted, I would have 0 shares, right? So it's the fact that you can get him after pick 350, and he could be a guy that you're just leaving in your lineup in 15 teamers for most of the season. Like I think he's good enough to be that type of guy. So it's all about the price of Detmers.
Totally random, but you know who a guy I picked up in that fast DC that I'm going to be all over now?
Yeah.
Because I just didn't realize exactly how dominant he was. Jonathan Loaizaga.
Oh yeah.
I feel like he's a guy in 15 teamers you're just going to leave be and just get some wins, some saves. Great
got a
ratio.
couple Loaizaga shares as well.
99th percentile chase rate and just elite expected outcomes.
He's always had that sort of injury tag. I mean, that's why he never made it as a starter. But he was healthy, I believe, pretty much all last season. So, when he's healthy, he's going to be great.
Yeah, I was profiling him, and I just like, wow, I didn't realize. I mean, he's averaging 98, tons of whiffs, really good stuff. So, not the most fantasy friendly roll out of the gate in traditional leagues for Loizaga, but I'm gonna make it a priority to draft him. Probably just leave him be in a spot all season in an active spot in a 15-teamer. Well, let's get into these priority follows during spring training. This is the next grouping. And you texted me. I appreciate this too. During the first pitch Arizona Speakers draft to grab Cody Morris. Take a late shot at Cody Morris. You've done so in 3 out of your 7 leagues. I actually missed him. I assumed I had more time, and then I did the search in the room, and he was already long gone. But I did grab him in the subsequent draft I did. So he sounds like a sleeper that more people need to mark down and be aware of.
Did you get him in the fast DC? That's actually that's the one I was trying to get you to take.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I got him in that one. So thank you.
Yeah,
I also got Mitch White in that one after missing him in the first pitch.
I don't care. I don't really care whether you take down the Speakers draft or not, but I really do want you to take down Mike the Mouth in that that fast DC.
Well, I should with Mitch White and Cody Morris in tow.
Yeah, I mean,
what
Morris,
in particular about Cody Morris?
So I think I texted you after I wrote his outlook, and then you said I've got him in 3 of 7 leagues. I've got him in my last 2 leagues, so I was only 1 for 5, and then I went 2 for 2. From then on, he just became a guy where I just pushed him far enough past ADP where I knew I was going to get him just to make sure. And he's, of all the prospects on my top 400, he's the guy that I know is going to be the biggest riser on the next update. I'll probably do one more update right before the start of the season after spring training. And Cody Morris will probably be borderline top 50 prospect at that point. Just really, really, really good stuff. And he's kind of like, he's just a massive, massive breakout candidate, sleeper, whatever you want to call him, just kind of hiding in plain sight. Like his numbers last year were out of this world, and his curveball and changeup and fastball are just monster pitches, all 3 of them. And I just, he's kind of a skills over role type of guy, because obviously you look at that Cleveland rotation, and if everyone's healthy, I think Cody Morris opens at AAA. But I mean, you got Bieber coming back from the shoulder thing. I feel like Tristan McKenzie is always an injury risk. I'm not done with Eli Morgan as a starter, but I could see Cleveland just giving him a long relief role out of the gate. So not too many guys would need to get hurt for Morris to be the next man up. And, I think he's just so talented that he will be in that rotation sooner than later, one way or another. He is on the 40-man roster. He pitched at AAA last year. So it's a matter of if, not when, or when, not if, Morris joins that rotation.
Wow, that's pretty exciting stuff on Cody Morris. And yeah, usually with these guys who have that kind of upside, even if there's not an obvious path, they're going 400, 450. Here that he's going outside the top 550. So yeah, like one of the best pitching prospects in the game, just freely available late.
I just don't. I almost throw that ADP out though with him. Like, it's just,
especially now that you've put the word out, you've put the bat signal.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not just me. Like, I texted DVR the other day. Like, I was kind of annoyed that he's pumping Morris up too. Like, before you know it, the price is just going to be like, Morris is going to be going right by Reed Detmers pretty soon. So just don't focus in on that ADP. Like,
don't expect them to be there.
Yeah, still. Whenever you want to grab him, just grab him.
Put him in your queue and go grab him when there's nobody else who really jumps out. That's a good call. Well, we'll continue on with this tier of priority follows during spring training, whenever we get spring training. But first, we'll take a quick word from our sponsors. And we are back on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, brought to you by WinBet. Clay Link here with James Anderson. James, we're on to the Reds. I want to go down to the last player listed here, Raver San Martin. I guess Raver. You got to roll the R, I guess, so it's properly pronounced. Just a really interesting guy in that I didn't really see enough with my own two eyes to have much of a take on him. The stuff doesn't like light up the radar gun, but a 2.9% barrel rate. Just not a guy, he's 25. I didn't really know much about him coming up, but it seems like he's a pretty legit arm that we need to be taking seriously, at least in the later portions of drafts.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've had more conversations like off air with people about San Martin than almost any pitching prospect this offseason. Like, it's just, he's a guy that, I've talked with Dylan White of Prospects Live about San Martin a little bit, San Martin. My buddy Brick, so I'm in a couple dynasty leagues with, we've talked about him a lot. He's this fascinating pitching prospect because he only averages 89.5 miles per hour on his four-seamer. So that it's very easy to just see that right away and kind of write him off, right? Because like, how many other pitchers are you taking that average less than 90 miles an hour on their fastball? Mm-hmm. We're talking about, kind of a Marco Gonzalez, like Ryan Yarbrough zone. There aren't that many guys that you're taking that throw that slow, but he really is deceptive. You can see that pretty easily just when you watch him, and his four-seamer has just crazy horizontal break, very tough to pick up, and his slider and changeup are both really good secondary offerings. So I think I ranked San Martin too low on that last prospect update as well. I'm not going to hang my hat on him being good. Velocity is still a very important part of pitching, and he doesn't really have it, but he's got a lot of other stuff working for him. And of the Reds pitchers in this tier, I think he's the best bet to have a rotation spot out of spring training. Obviously, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, more well-known prospects, better long-term prospects, but I think San Martin seems like a pretty good bet to be in that rotation if he stays healthy.
Yeah, and that fastball, even with that kind of middling velocity, in a small sample last year at the big league level, but 0 hits allowed on 51 four-seam fastballs thrown. Willing to throw it as a put-away pitch. So, yeah, it's kind of, even though it is a small sample, crazy to see his fastball have that kind of success.
It runs right across, like the horizontal movement. Like I said, it's you don't see it on many fastballs. So I mean, if you just watch him, it's easy to see why guys have trouble even at that velocity.
Yeah, he threw 4 pitches roughly 20% of the time last year. The changeup and the sinker were knocked around pretty good. Again, it's only like a couple starts, but the quality of that fastball, even if it's not the fastest pitch, should set him up pretty well to at least have a little run as a starter. Hopefully he can pick on those teams in the NL Central, as we talked about earlier. So Hunter Green, obviously kind of on the opposite end in that he's like a big-time prospect. He was on the cover of SI when he was a teenager before he got drafted and really took a step forward last year. I'm a little surprised he's not going higher, and you're not really all over him, 1 out of 7 leagues, but it does seem like the price is about right outside the top 400.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is. I mean, the reason I don't have him in more than one league is because of the price. I think like Lodolo and San Martin are just as good at bets this year, and they're going like 80 picks later. I think Green's the best bet long term, but I think the other two are closer to finished products when you factor in Green's third pitch. Green's probably got the worst command of those three. So I think you're I think his name value is doing a lot of the work here with the ADP, his prospect ranking, and I have zero shares of Roansy Contreras as well with the Pirates, who actually like a ton, but that's kind of about the price as well. Like these two guys are basically going kind of where Reed Detmers was going, at least a couple weeks ago. That was the case. So I just wasn't going after those guys. I would take Mitch White over Green and Contreras. So it's the other guys going around there that's led me to sort of be out on those two.
I hear you, but let me tell you why I think Green's a decent cost at that ADP. I think the Reds are going to trade it, probably Sonny and maybe one other guy. I know the Blue Jays were sniffing around on Tyler Mahle. I think we could maybe make something work between those clubs, but I do think there'll be at least a starter or two cleared out there.
Are you? I mean, I agree with you. I kind of don't know whether.
Yeah, we don't know.
Like, I don't know why we're favoring Green over Lodolo, I guess, for this season.
You did note that Lodolo had some shoulder and blister issues though at the end of last year.
Yeah, and everything I've heard secondhand is that he's just completely over those, and it was more about the blister than the shoulder. You don't want to just take that at oh, he's definitely going to be healthy. But if we're just comparing health risk, Green and Lodolo, even with Lodolo being the one who was most recently injured, I'd say it's about the same. But I did want to ask you, I know that you're about as diehard of a fan as I know. Like you watch Reds games, even when things are pretty bad late in the season. Are you hoping that they kind of tear it down and trade those guys?
No, I mean Sonny can probably go. I think it's the last year of his deal, but no, I hope they try. I just know that they're realigning payroll with resources, and it seems like they there's been a lot of rumors about moving maybe Castillo or Sonny, so it just seems like things are leaning that way for the club.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I have no idea. It's unwise to kind of bake that in when you're looking at guys, but I do feel like there'll be a clearer avenue for some of these starters in that system. Now you mentioned for the Pirates, you're not really on Contreras, but Miguel Yajure, he's going so late that one of those last picks in your DC, you willing to throw a dart at Miguel Yajure?
Yeah, that's where I've been getting him, is just kind of in the end game of draft champions. He's probably not very good, but I think he could win a rotation spot in spring training, and he throws a bunch of pitches. He's got a really sort of thin margin for error. He's only averaging 91 miles an hour on his fastball. Needs to be commanding his pitches to have success, but he has, it hasn't just been all bad for him in the majors, Yajure. He has had some runs of success and some runs of success at AAA, and it's really just kind of all about that opportunity. I think the Pirates are going to give tons of guys a shot in that rotation throughout the season. So he recently dealt with a back injury. I'd rather take Bryce Wilson over him in that rotation, but it's really just about the fact that you can get him in the absolute end game.
And then for the Yankees, I mentioned I like Jonathan Loaizaga. He's not totally free though. You have to, at least in those DCs, you have to spend a mid-round pick on him. Luis Gil going later, and at least with Luis Gil, you have a starting pitcher. Some success last year too. The WHIP was a little high, but there'll probably be some opportunities to deploy Luis Gil here and there throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean he's a specific type of pitcher. Still some bullpen risk long term. He's almost exclusively fastball slider, but there are guys that is not you're not a starter anymore, kind of cut and dry thing that it used to be 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We've seen teams give guys who are mostly two pitch guys, especially when it's the fastball and the slider and they're that good. We've seen guys have success with that type of mix as starters, even if it's just kind of as a five and dive starter. I like everything about Heel that he does well. Like I love his composure. I love those two pitches. I think he's athletic enough that I think he's going to throw enough strikes. So he will get some shots throughout the year. I do not expect him to open the year in the rotation, but just I think he's getting slept on a little bit.
What can you tell us about Matt Brash of the Seattle Mariners? Looks like a pretty darn good run at Double-A Arkansas last year, but you putting much stock into that?
Yeah, I thought the combo that Jeff and I had a couple weeks ago about Brash, he was kind of all over those Mariners guys, Kirby, Brash, and Williamson in that combo because he had just talked to one of their minor league pitching coaches. And Brash's breaking ball, Jeff called it a curveball in his article. I know most scouts would tell you it looks like a slider. But whatever you want to call his breaking ball, it's one of the best breaking balls in all of pro ball, not just the minors. And so he's another guy where it's mostly fastball breaking ball with him, although he has done a little bit with his changeup, but it sort of sounds like he's the first Mariners pitching prospect who's going to get a look in that rotation this year. And the strikeout upside is pretty extreme with him. There's still a little bit of reliever risk just in terms of the command. But I think he's going to get a couple years to show that he can start. And at the range he's going, like almost outside the top 600, I think it's well worth it.
Now, in the draft I was doing recently, Jack Leiter went in one of the late rounds. I was kind of surprised. You don't have him in this tier, nor do you have him in the Fab events tier that we'll get to. It sounds like you'd probably rather, go take a shot on Cole Winn in that system.
Yeah, I just have no confidence Leiter's going to be up this year. He might be, but I just think you're really just drafting name value and hype. Like I know some people have him ranked as like a top 5 pitching prospect in the game. I can't do that. A guy that hasn't even pitched in games. Like there's so many good pitching prospects out there. I think he's got a bright future if he stays healthy. But like Cole Winn might have 3+ pitches, and he got to AAA last year. And the Rangers have maybe the worst rotation in baseball. Maybe not worse than the Pirates, but I mean it's really bad. So he's going to get.
They spent all that money too. They want to. I mean, they want to compete right away.
Well, I mean,
it's not going to happen, but
it's delusional. To. Whatever they're doing, I mean, they're not going to compete this year. But like, Wynn's going to get opportunities is the point. And his ADP, when I wrote this article, was 654. I got him in 4 out of 7 leagues. He's not a guy that I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to start him. Like I probably won't even start him in his debut in my draft and hold leagues because I want to see how he does against big leaguers. But the stuff is good. The opportunity is clearly there. I just think he's a really nice draft and hold target.
The larger body of work, you mentioned he got to AAA, but the 19 starts at AA were crazy impressive for Cole Winn. 2.19 ERA, 0.82 WHIP, 97 to 26 K to walk in 78 innings. And yeah, my larger point about them spending all that money is that they're just not. There's not going to be any like waiting around on prospects or playing games with them.
Totally.
By the way, bummer about Josh Young. We talked about him last week, then immediately got some bad news about him. Real
yes.
Surgery out 6 months, so probably the entire year. I'm assuming here. Maybe the final month.
Couldn't have come at a worse time for him because this could have been a breakout year for him. But I mean,
a lot of Kiner Falefa again for that team.
He's it'll be. I think Young probably does fall in the prospect rankings and the dynasty rankings. I know people have been asking about that. I wouldn't say he's going to fall a ways, but part of the appeal with him was the proximity.
Absolutely. Now these Marlins arms here, sounds like you're completely hands off with these guys. Edward Cabrera, Sixto Sanchez, the injury, and it doesn't sound like just the price on Cabrera isn't really close for you.
No, I mean, I kind of had these guys ranked within the tier based on how much I want them, and yeah, you can see that there are guys going after the Marlins very consistently that I like more for this year. So, very pessimistic about Sixto Sanchez, short term and long term, due to the injury and the makeup. And Cabrera, I think, has a bright future, but he's also an injury risk, and I don't think he's got a clear path to that rotation to start the year. I think he's still got some stuff to work on. So I think Cabrera, if he stays healthy this year, is a guy that I'll have a decent amount of exposure to next year.
The Sixto Sanchez ADP over the last month of 373 just seems baffling, preposterous, whatever you want to say to me, because I mean, most of these guys we've talked about so far, like outside the top 450, people are reaching on Sixto still, even with the injury and then not following his rehab plan from the team.
It's the name value, right? Yeah. I mean, he's the guy that everyone has heard of and the guy that everyone's seen in the majors. So
once you get to a certain point in the draft room, you just don't recognize his name, so you go after the one you do recognize. For Atlanta, the world champs, Kyle Muller, Tucker Davidson on this list of players to watch in spring training. Kind of interesting that Freddie report yesterday. But obviously this team will have high hopes again this year. Do you think either of these guys play a significant role for the team in 2022?
It's just a tough situation for me to read. I mean, they could. There could be a rotation spot up for grabs in camp. There might even be like 2 rotation spots up for grab in camp. You got Morton coming back from injury, Enoa coming back from injury. Who knows if they're going to bring anyone else in after the lockout, but Mike Soroka might be back at some point. I don't think they're quite willing to be done with Kyle Wright as a starter, but there's just kind of a lot of middling to mediocre arms that are going to be fighting for the 5th spot in that rotation. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to play out, but like I said in the article, like spring training might tell us something there.
Yeah, and Morton is a guy I'll be watching pretty carefully. By the way, are you on Morton? I get for some reason I have in my head that you're a pretty big fan of Charlie Morton's draft price.
I am.
Yeah. He had a great year, and obviously got hurt. Comebacker off the leg in the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, made a good point to me about Morton, just like how good he was even after suffering that injury.
He struck out.
So I know that there was that sort of weird quote from him earlier this month where he said he's mostly caught up.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of freaking out about that. I would be much more concerned if that was a quote regarding like an arm injury. I think, he seems to be someone that should be ready by opening day. You always got to be careful, but with the fact that it's a lower body injury, I just think he's got, top 12, top 15 starter potential on a per start basis. So I'm okay with the cost right now.
Yeah, that high spin approach of his has been money. I'm with you. Now, Sammy Long, he wasn't like a Fabapalooza type. There wasn't some big like chase to go acquire him, but he was a name that popped up last year that people went out and acquired. Was a little bit of a flash in the pan in his time last year, but because the numbers did deteriorate pretty quickly. But you still think there's, you're not sky high on Sammy Long, but you think he can be viable at times this year?
Well, it's kind of about the team and the depth chart. He's basically their 6th starter, and that requires Tyler Beatty to be fully recovered and everything and earn a rotation spot ahead of him. Now they could add someone, and then Sammy Long's all of a sudden your 7th or 8th starter, and he's less appealing. But there's very few organizations where I'd rather roll the dice on a pitcher with than the Giants, based on their recent track record. So,
I even just drafted Alex Cobb.
Oh man,
which I never saw myself doing.
I'm a big Cobb guy this offseason.
Are you? Nice. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I mean that. Obviously, it's easy to draw the parallels with Gaussman, but throws a splitter too. Cobb.
Yeah, I mean Cobb. The main knock on him to me is just probably can't count on him for more than like 140, 150, just based on recent years. But I'm just not worried at all about him when he does pitch. I think the quality of innings you're going to get is going to be really strong.
Yeah, I hear you there. Well, next up, Cardinals, Matthew Librator. That defense is strong. He had some name value at some point. Who was he traded for? Was he in the Rosarena deal?
Yep.
That's right. So that's not looking so good in retrospect, but do you think Librator can be a quality starter for them over the next few years?
Yeah, I got a little bit too down on him, I think, in recent years because of the fastball, but he's another guy that Jeff pointed out in his article that the slider has become a big-time pitch. And as you kind of mentioned, that Cardinals team situation is about as good as it gets.
Absolutely. Real quick, we had a question in the chat about Seya Suzuki. I just wanted to I know this is not really, evaluating overseas prospects, not really your thing, but do you have any thoughts, any take at all on Seya Suzuki this draft season?
I have no idea how good he's going to be. And
yeah, it's so hard to evaluate.
Led to me just being pretty hands-off.
Yeah, if you don't have any lean one way or another, it's probably best to just, go another route that you do feel a little better about. Thank you, by the way, James, for your thoughts there. Real quick, I'm serious. I'm legit. I was not being facetious there. Hope you'll bear with us. I will bring you a quick word from our sponsors, then we'll wrap things up with more Pitching Prospect Tiers 2.0. WinBet is now the exclusive sponsor for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts. WinBet brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WinBet's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at baccarat. WinBet is currently available in 9 states: Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WinBet, the possibilities are limitless. Register for WinBet today, make a qualifying deposit, and wager to receive $200 in free bets. Promotion may vary by state. Download WinBet now. That's WYNNBET. WinBet, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts. And then also experience a new way to play daily fantasy sports on Thrive Fantasy. Thrive Fantasy is an exciting player prop fantasy contest. With Thrive Fantasy, you can eliminate the countless hours of research and focus on only the top-tier athletes that have the biggest impact on the game. Sign up for Thrive Fantasy today and receive a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. Here's how you can claim your free RotoWire subscription. Visit rotowire.com/thrive. Deposit a minimum of $10 and receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. Then finally play in your first paid contest and receive a free 6-month RotoWire subscription. So, James, as we wrap things up in this priority follows during spring training tier, a couple more players. Josh Winder, not familiar at all with him. Sounds like you're not really on him, but at least a name that we should be monitoring, Josh Winder.
Yeah, I really like Winder when he's healthy. The problem is he ended last year not healthy with a shoulder issue. So he's one of my top priorities this spring to just kind of see, is he back to full health? If he looks good in spring training, like I might bump Winder up like 50 spots in the top 400 prospect rankings. I'm just downgrading him right now due to health.
And what about Tommy Romero for the Rays? Any reason to follow this 24-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, it's the skills are there. There's a lot to like. It's just the situation isn't ideal. The Rays, who knows how they're going to use him early in the year. But if he is really good in spring training, his time could come sooner than later. He is on the 40-man. I think his price right now in draft and hold leagues is pretty fair with an ADP of 681.
With the way they send guys up, send them down, and utilize all members of the 40-man roster, I would expect to see Tommy Romero this year, especially at his age. Kind of old for a prospect, but he's been brought along pretty gradually, it looks like. But yeah, good for him. Looks like we'll see him. He was added to the 40-man, as you said, this past November for Rule 5 protection. So we'll get into this next tier. This will be the last tier we touch on, but definitely check out the rest of James's article for yourself, rotowire.com/try for a free 10-day trial, 10 days on us, no credit card required. These are the guys who really shouldn't. Well, some of these guys are being drafted in those draft and holds, but these are more guys that you see as being left. It's best to leave them for the fab pile in traditional leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I've ended up with Cade Cavalli in a couple of leagues just because he's got big time upside and the price is right at 560, and I think the Nationals clearly have an easy rotation to crack, but for the most part, these guys are going to be big time buzz guys in fab. Some of them might not be even sort of household names yet. Brandon Williamson and Caleb Killian, two guys who I think are still pretty under the radar. But I think by the time they're getting that promotion, they won't be under the radar anymore. And they could all be guys that require 10% or more of your fab.
Grayson Rodriguez is the first name in this tier. Baltimore pitcher, tough division to pitch in, obviously, but the changes at Camden, I don't have any way to really quantify how that's going to affect things, but you do got to feel better for their pitching prospects in the years ahead, knowing that the dimensions are a little bit more pitcher friendly.
Yeah, it's just I have no idea when he's going to be up. I think he could be very good once he's up, but I'm not even confident that he's up before June, and he could get hurt before he gets the call. So, kind of a boom or bust draft and hold pick.
We talked last week about how with the DH and the NL, like a team like the Phillies just didn't have the players to cover the spots. And I kind of feel like that with the Nationals. And in that rotation, like Fetty, Paulo Espino, Joe Ross, he's going to be hurt at some point. Strasburg's a huge question mark. Corbin was the worst qualified starter by a mile last year by ERA. And so, yeah, Cavalli, I'd imagine he could make 15 or so starts this year.
Yeah, I mean, he could make more than that even. He's a boomer bust guy. Like all these guys, we don't have to talk about them all individually. Like they're all just very high upside, very unclear when we see them. I kind of had them ranked, like factoring in upside, factoring in how early I think we could see them. That's kind of how I ranked them. Like Max Meyer, I think getting overdrafted at 492 because it's a crowded rotation, and he's not better than Grayson or Cade Cavalli, and I don't think he's necessarily closer than Grayson or Cade Cavalli. George Kirby, very high ceiling. I think he's going to be very good if he stays healthy, but again, pretty far off in terms of the debut to me. Like we might not see him till June or July. So it's just these are guys where we just hope they stay healthy. If they stay healthy, they will be heard from at some point, but it might not be for a couple months.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Brandon Williamson. He's a top, 100 prospect for you, but it's just not a name that I've heard bandied about much. But yeah, the Seattle, they're going to be pretty good this year, I think. And if you can get him pitching in front of that team a few times, there could be spots to use him. And Caleb Killian, anything to share there as far as his rise?
Yeah, I mean, he's looks really good. I wrote outlooks on all these guys. in these first 3 tiers, the ones we talked about today, or first 4 tiers. Killian is a guy who probably gets another bump with a solid spring training. He's just pitched really well at all his recent stops. His stuff has ticked up. But again, I don't know when we see him. Maybe we see him in May or June, and that'd be awesome. But he might spend like most of the year in the minors. It's just really tough to say.
The 236th pick in 2019. Killian, and he was included in the Chris Bryant deal, along with Canario, who had I recognize that name, but it seems like Killian's the better prospect that they got in that deal for Chris Bryant. Well, James, anything else on your mind? I think we can, we touched on a lot. We probably wrap things up a little early today, unless you have anything you want to mention.
I mean, I keep I think my like earbuds are like about to die, so we maybe should wrap things up. I dropped the ball there and didn't give them the proper charge.
Hey, that's all right. Hey, no need to fluff it up with extra content. We've got a lot of good stuff today.
We should mention that Farm Friday is returning.
Yeah,
not this Friday, but next Friday on Sirius XM Radio.
Yeah, join us if you can on Fridays for Farm Friday and Saturdays if you can. That'll be fun talking with you. We'll have a ton of great guests coming on and picking the brains of some of the smartest people in the industry, yourself included. That'll be a lot of fun. I'm also hosting on Thursdays with Jeff Erickson. So like it or not, you'll get some more of me on there. By the way, Caleb Killian, 6 perfect innings in the AFL championship game.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was his coming out party for sure. His stuff's trended up. Like when he was part of that Bryant deal, like the most recent reports I'd seen was more that he was about command and control, but he really showed kind of throughout the season, especially in the AFL, that he's actually got really good stuff to go with that command and control.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. We've talked about how, the pitching, not great typically, or at least the last few years at the AFL, but Cavalli impressive, and to be carving up those AFL lineups is pretty good sign, because while the pitching prospects are usually kind of underwhelming, there are a lot of good hitting prospects in the fall league. So good on Cade Cavalli. Well, James, thank you so much. Really appreciate all the insight, and definitely check out Pitching Prospect Tiers 2.0, rotowire.com/try for a 10-day trial. That'll do it for us. Get those earbuds charged up, and we'll be back next week. Hope you'll join us on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast, sponsored by WinBet.